Will the Monday evening, November 14th zoning subcommittee please come to order? The first issue we have is C-1608, it's East Boston Savings Bank, Squire Rd, Revere, seeking permission from the City Council to construct a 20 by 40 accessory garage permit within the private commercial parking lot at 126 Squire Road. Mr. Cipolletta?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Honorable members, James Cipolletta, 385 Broadway, Revere. As the councilors will recall, we came before the council on a public hearing for a special permit to erect a garage in the rear of the parking lot of East Boston Savings Bank to house the mobile branch that they have been utilizing. And they're quite anxious to have that protected from the elements during the winter and the bad weather. The Councilor Guanasso had inquired whether or not we had spoken to the neighbors. Keith Armstrong, who's the vice president, had personally gone with his people and spoke to the abutters and the neighbors. So if there are any questions with regard to that, Keith can answer them. Also, Brian, who's going to build the structure, can answer any construction type questions, but with regard to all of the dimensional controls, the setbacks and so forth, it's completely within the zoning regs.
Thank you, Attorney Cipolletta. Councilor Guanasso.
Mr. Chairman, certainly I'm pleased to hear that Keefe went to the neighborhood and he spoke to the neighbors, he closed the butters, because obviously that's going to be a pretty large structure, housing a pretty large motor vehicle. And so the only question I have is in the closest abutter, will you be right adjacent to his property, or will you be up away from the parking lot?
The structure would be pretty close to the property line.
It would be?
Yes.
And they have no objection?
They indicated they had no problem with our plan.
And this is going to be 20 foot high?
No, it's not 20 foot high.
I thought it was 20 by 40.
20 by 20 wide, 40 long. The height, how much?
16?
16 feet to the roof.
Okay. So it's a high structure. Obviously, it's almost higher and taller than their home. And they have no objection. It's pretty close.
They indicated no objection when I met with them.
Okay, I take you on your, and I haven't received any calls, so that's a good thing for you, because usually when I get the calls, it's not a good thing for you. But
Right.
if that's the case, I take you on your word. And now, obviously, we look to do what we can for the business community, and certainly East Boston Savings has been a good neighbor for many years. So we look forward to many more years in the future. Good luck.
Thank you. Yeah.
I have no further questions, Mr. Chairman.
Patrick Keefe.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have one question for the people looking for the permit, the structure. Just, would there be, besides housing the vehicle, would there be any mechanical work being done in there? Or is it, great, good. That's the only concern I would have. Thank you.
Joanne, would you like to ask a question? No? Tony? Charlie? Tony?
Just that I'm in support of this. Obviously, East Boston Savings Bank has been a wonderful neighbor for many years to the city. We want more corporate citizens like East Boston Savings Bank, and anything I can do to make their life easier, I'm willing to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. On a motion to approve, all those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? So voted. Thank you, Mr. Cipolletta. Thanks, guys. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, the mayor is en route. The mayor is en route. He should be here.
Yeah. He's not making a motion. He's not here.
Next item on the zoning subcommittee agenda this evening is 16-157, motion by Councillor Rotondo that the city investigate the feasibility of obtaining foreign trade zone status for general purpose and subzones.
Anyone like to speak on this issue? My back's so light. What's the opinion of the council? There being none, Mr. Keefe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I was hoping to get some more information from the maker of the motion. I believe Councillor Rotondo is unable to be here right now, but probably like to see what the intent of how he'd like to pursue this. Maybe put it on hold until he can be able to speak on this topic.
Well, we hold all of these things, and, you know, an example was, I had a motion in Legislative Affairs since February 22nd. This is now November 14th. And the individual that put the motion in has not appeared. So I don't know if you, Joanne, how do you feel about this?
Thank you. I just don't have enough information on it. I would like to hear
Okay.
more from Councillor Rotondo.
Okay. Council Patch?
Well, I'm not on the committee, but if it was my motion, I'd be here. Right? What can I tell you?
Right, I know, it gets frustrating.
You're the chairman.
Right. Mr. Zambuto?
So this is for a foreign trade zone?
Yeah.
Yeah. Again, I don't have enough information either, so I was hoping the proponent or the maker of the motion would be here to explain his reasoning, because
Yep.
obviously I have an open mind to everything, but I can't vote on something blind.
Keep it in the committee, correct? Next item.
Council Order Number 16-272, motion of Councillor Rotondo that the city adopt a pedestrian and transit-oriented development overlay district from Route 1A North to Route 60 East.
Anyone like to speak? Same thing, keep it in committee?
Here again, you know, I'm intrigued by the concept. However, I don't know where he's going with it and what he's done in research and what he thinks it'll do. So, yeah, keep it in committee.
Keep it in committee. Next item.
Council Order Number 16-292, motion by Councillor Rotondo that the city establish a 6-month construction moratorium on residential properties greater than 4 units.
Since we're a little ahead of schedule with the last 3 issues being done. Paul would-
Can I take a quick shot at this?
Yeah,
Again, I don't have the information, but I have enough information to be against this.
okay. Anyone else? Do you want to vote on this evening? Arthur?
Well, I'm not a member, Mr. Chairman, of the subcommittee. If I were, I would offer my opinion, and since you asked me, I think initially when the public hearing was conducted, I stated my views very clearly that I felt that for this moratorium on residential properties, I think it's more detrimental to our community with 1, 2, and 3, and 4 family units in our city. I think those are the ones that are being abused by overusage of inhabitants. And certainly, one could only testify that if they knock on doors and review the area, you see on these homes, these 1, 2, 3, 4 family homes, multiple amounts of mailboxes. Right. And that is an indicator to me that there's many families living within that structure. That, I think, is what we should focus our attention on. Again, I think, you know, and I know the public outcry is out there to shoot down everything. But you know something? I think when the HAAS site comes to fruition, I think we're going to be so pleased with what we see there. And in testimony also, I did research, and it's not scientific and it's not brain searching.
Right.
When I went to locations such that had large, multiple families on the condo level, I went before the St. George, I went before Atlantica, I went before the Breakers, I went before the Carabetta units, and I went before Seaview. I didn't see a lot of traffic coming in. I didn't see a lot of traffic going out in any one of these locations. On multiple different times that I did it in the morning, I did it in the afternoon, I did it in the evening. I did not see the infusion of traffic into our community that's got people so upset. Now, one bears to mind, traversing many local cities yesterday, it was bumper to bumper to bumper everywhere. So traffic is everywhere. It's not isolated to the city of Revere. And again, more importantly, Revere is a regional area. Every connector road, you go to Boston, you got to go through Revere. You go to the North Shore, you got to go through Revere. You go to South Shore, folks that live in the North Shore, got to go through Revere. So we are a regional area, and it impacted by traffic from other locations other than the city of Revere. So I don't think that this is just my belief now.
Yeah.
I think that this particular motion would not be worthy of my vote.
Thank you. Councillor Keefe?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just to touch briefly on this motion, I think that there's some merit behind what Councillor Rotondo is proposing. Certainly the M word, moratorium, can be scary, especially to developers that want to come to our city. So I would definitely want to spend a lot of time talking about what we would do and what we could do and what we wouldn't do, and certainly don't want to send the message out to prospective developers when we have two of the largest parcels of land close to Boston, obviously Suffolk Downs and Wonderland. And then the third, I guess, big question mark is what are we going to do eventually if in fact something happens with Lee Trailer Park? And I don't want to speak on private property issues, but those are three major developments or potential developments that could happen in the city. And I think that there's so much anxiety out there. I know that we have the mayor here and we have the economic development officer here. We want to get some information so that we can qualm these fears that we're going to get as a city nickel and dimed with apartments. So this motion in some essence would be nice, but it needs to be done right so that we can bring the right people in, so we can have the right developments coming in. And so I would actually like to hear from the economic development chair or director to come and explain maybe what are the perspectives.
We're going to get to that. First the
Great.
councils.
And that's what I would like to hear before we did anything irrational, because I do agree, when you send that message out there outside of the city and you send it to other states and you send it to developers out of New York, you send it to developers in across the country, we don't want to send the wrong impression. We want to bring in the right business. So it's something really to discuss.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Patch?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since I'm not a member of the committee, thank you for letting me speak.
I think this issue is so important, we have to open up the committee to everyone.
Well, first of all, I don't think, 6 months usually takes longer than 6 months to put a plan together, right? And I really feel that I really hate to close up the shop for the Bob O'Brien, the economic development, or the mayor. What if somebody like Bob Kraft comes in next week and wants to do something? I just think it's, we let the process work the way it has in the past. I think, I know I got the message, and I think my colleagues got the message after Shaw's, what the people want, and that we will go along very slowly and with more information, and that we will hopefully develop these areas. So I would be against it, and I don't think we should put that restriction on the mayor's office and the economic development. And like I say, who knows is going to show up tomorrow with a nice plan for us, and that's all I got to say. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We also have with us today Judge Rotondo and Council President Janino with us today. John?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sorry for my tardiness, but I was on the phone with a constituent on another matter earlier, and well, I'm here now. I have feelings about the moratorium, and I'll give you an example. This week, I had a meeting with a potential developer who wants to put in condominiums in an area that's zoned RC1. He could go 50 stories if he wanted, but he doesn't want to do that. He's talking about 5 stories, 50 units. And then again, it's in an area where he could probably put 250 units in there, and he's not looking to do that. He's looking to do something that works for the city, that's sensible. You know, we as a city council all have different ideas and different opinions. And I think it's incumbent upon us to take each project, each proposal separately. Look at them. They're all different. I didn't support the original Shaw site, 300 units. I felt that was not the right thing to do. I did, after much discussion with the developers, agree to support bring it down 105 apartments, which I thought was a good thing. But the best thing out of that was we're getting a hotel. A hotel that'll probably generate, when it's occupied, and $500,000 to $750,000 a year in taxes. So something like that. Do you really want to close the door, as Councilor Keefe said, to potential developers who, you know, maybe are looking to come into the city? I don't think so. I don't think that's the right thing. I think as city councilors, we get elected to exercise a certain authority, and I think we should look at each individual proposal individually and not just put a blanket on the entire development process in the city. We have a lot of opportunity before us. We're probably 3 miles from Logan Airport. We have Wonderland, for instance, and I'm not looking to put apartments down on Wonderland, believe me. I think that's commercial, and it should be office park, shops, restaurants, things like that. Things that will attract the type of person to the city that we're looking to bring in here. But 35 plus acres. Blue line across the street, right to Logan Airport. Brand new parking garage. The possibility of a commuter stop in the back. What do you say to a developer when you put a moratorium out there? I don't care if it's for 6 months or 6 weeks, that you're against development in the city? I don't think that's the right message to send. So I cannot support this evening. I'll take every individual proposal that comes before me separately, and I'll look at it and vote the way I feel the residents of this city would want me to vote. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Council Powers. Councilor Rotondo?
Thank you,
To
Mr.
maker
Chairman.
of the motion.
This is a great departure from 2015, where I have both the chairman's signature and Councilor Powers' signature for the moratorium. This is a great departure, as well as many other people's.
Point of information. The reason there was no
Point of
development
information,
back
Mr.
there,
Chairman, I'd like to
okay,
see the
is
signature that
now-
we're talking about.
Good. Good, Judge.
That said, and I think Mayor Rigo can testify that there are some people that he knows of that have signed that same paper. But that said, to include former building inspector John Barrett, I can go down the list. I remember them off the top of my head. But if you want to challenge that, by means do it.
On the issue before us.
That is it.
Well done.
Can I ask the question here for those people who are city councilors? Can anybody tell me what the creative district is? Anybody here? Does anybody here on this council know what the creative district is? Can you tell me?
This is not a question.
I'm asking a question. No, it's not
I mean,
jeopardy,
really,
but
I
here's
mean-
the point. You're deciding on a moratorium and you don't even know what your zoning is. The creative district is a district that was created in 2015, in which we got a $22,000 grant. It's been expanded to Wonderland Dog Park, which it wasn't originally. That is a far departure from before. And in fact, the creative district employs wanting to create more residential facets to a development. Do you want to put more residential in a Wonderland Dog Park? Is that what you want to do?
I guess they're saying no.
If you don't know the answer to what's going on in our city regarding zoning, you don't think there's a need for a moratorium? Do you know what our largest growing population is in our city particularly?
I'm sure you know.
I do.
Well, tell us.
It's Salvadorians.
Good.
They're our largest growing population. We don't have an idea of what it is that we're doing here. We don't have any master plan before us, which is part of the issue. And having a 3-month moratorium or a 6-month moratorium during the months in which construction doesn't normally take place will not hurt anybody. However, you all think that it's going to stop development. I'd like to know who that developer is, other than Mr. Dillon on the beach, who I've spoken to. But regardless of that...
Is that the one that just passed away?
No, a different Dillon. So regardless of that, in fact, Hal Abrams is doing the engineering.
Oh, I know Hal, yeah.
So,
He's
but
all over the
regardless of
place.
that issue, the fact of the matter here is that we don't know where we're going as far as our zoning. You can't even tell me what a creative district is, nor where is it in this city.
Mr. Mayor?
Good evening, everyone. How are we doing? Earlier, a councilor mentioned misinformation, and I think the lack of information that people have. And it has been kind of proven tonight because the creative district is not expanded to Wonderland, Mr. Rotondo.
Point of information, more importantly, I didn't yield the floor. Second of all, this is from the City of Revere website. This is the actual PDF that's there. This says exactly what it says, creative district.
That's absolutely incorrect,
Well,
Mr.
then
Rotondo.
that's what it is. I mean, this is it. This is from your website. So that's wrong? This is incorrect.
The creative district is not
Then you need to fix
expanded
the
to
website.
Wonderland. And I don't know what you're looking at. I know we can Google all we want, and
This
we
is from
can
the
sit
city
on our
website. It's
computers
not
and talk
Googling.
about what we think we know.
It's not
The
Googling. It's
fact
from the
is-
city website.
The fact is that misinformation has
Again,
been the
this
reason
is
why.
from-
there
Mr.
are so
Chairman,
many
the mayor
people
has the
who
floor.
are
Let's let him
upset.
speak.
Speaker
point of
at a
order.
time.
I never yielded the floor, number one. Number
Well, he
two,
came up
Rule
for point of
29 is in
information.
order here.
Right?
Rule 29 is in order.
I understand that. He had a point of information, and as the mayor of
That,
the
I don't
city,
yield for that point of information as I hold the seat.
well,
do
you
you
hold the
understand
seat, but he's
parliamentary
the
procedure,
executive
sir?
of the city.
With all due respect,
All right, you get
you've
two
got
more.
an agenda, do it.
George, you get 2 more minutes. Wrap it up, okay?
Very simply, I pulled off the city's website.
Yeah. No, it's fine. Doesn't matter.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. I pulled off the city website this particular thing, and it says Revere Beach Creative District. Now, either the website is wrong, or what they did here from the Massachusetts Cultural Council and Cultural District Initiative application is wrong. But this is what it says right here. And that's as plain as it can be.
But we're talking about the moratorium that you
Right, and the reason for the
requested.
moratorium is that people don't understand what type of development we're doing in this city, where we're headed, what our master plan is. You couldn't even tell me what type of district was before us. And you're the chairman of zoning.
You want to speak? Yeah. Give him 30 seconds more.
I yield the rest of my time.
Thank you, Councilor. Joanne McKenna.
Thank you, Councilor HAAS. I did sit down with the mayor and Omar about 6 months ago and did see a plan for the creative district, which I was very impressed about. It was Revere Beach and Ocean Ave, Revere Beach taking on a replica of the old Revere Beach with signage and some gingerbread and some parks and cafes, and it was wonderful. And then in the back of Ocean Ave was going to be a walkway with lights, and I was very impressed. But I do agree with you, Councillor Rotondo. I do think that we need to have a creative approach to the development in Revere. And, you know, maybe we should take a breath and just, because I know talking to Mayor Arrigo, when he first got elected, he didn't want to see buildings, parcels. He wanted everything to be related. He wanted a creative approach. And it just seems like that's kind of happening. We have, you know, parcel going down into Mings, that's 60 units. We have a parcel going down into Bennington Street, which is 36 units. There's going to be, buildings on Ocean Ave, which might relate to the beach and the creative thought process that you had. But, I think we need to look at everything and have some sort of an agenda on creativity or, to go forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor. Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Chairman, thank you. I hope I can speak without interruption. In terms of what was spoken about earlier tonight, and a councilor had mentioned misinformation, and the fact that this is what plays into, I think, the fear that some people have about development. And the fact is that there have been people on this board who have continuously spread misinformation, whether it be that the Shaw's Side Hotel was going to be a 2-star quality inn, whether it was that the slot parlor that was brought before the entire Commonwealth was going to be a good thing for the city, or whether it's people have been supportive of a moratorium. The fact is, last year there was discussion about moratorium. And Councillor Rotondo, if you remember, I can pull up the YouTube video, maybe you can Google it yourself. I spoke against it because the fact is that we have opportunities for development that now, regionally, people know about and people care about, and they know that we've moved past the casino issue.
Right.
And to continuously have to hear misinformation about many different subjects. It could be a public health office that we open up on Revere Street that people say that is a methadone clinic. It could be a slot parlor with people who have no right doing business in the city of Revere that folks on this council want to support. The fact is that we have an incredible opportunity. We have incredible potential. You're all here and you all put your time in to be on the council because you believe in the city and you believe in the opportunities that we have. You believe in the potential that we have. Councilor Patch mentioned the fact that we do have a system already set up. And that system hasn't been perfect in terms of special permits and ZBA and site plan review. And the fact is, even with site plan review, one thing that I've heard from people is that they don't know about meetings. And we've changed that so that it's now subject to open meeting law. It's always been subject to open meeting law, but we're actually making our site plan review have a schedule and have a calendar of items and make sure that they're publicly posted so that nobody's caught off guard in terms of what is coming up before the city with potential development. But the fact is, I mean, I stand here today on a day where the Boston Globe had a front page article about a 35-acre piece of property in our city and the opportunities that are now there that we've all known about. And the fact is, and I'll let Bob speak to this a little bit, but the signal that this would send would be damaging. And we have the ability to say no to bad ideas. I think we've proved that with the slot parlor, which in my opinion was a terrible idea. And Councilor Rotondo, you're nodding, but I know for a fact that you were supportive of it. So I don't know why you're nodding in agreement with me,
Chairman, with
because
all
you
due
never stood up
respect-
and said you were against the slot parlor.
Actually, I was against the slot parlors. I said that here.
were both ways.
I was against you breaking someone's First Amendment, Fifth Amendment, 14th Amendment right.
Another
I didn't agree with it.
spread of
And that's just
misinformation and
that's just the
lies.
way
I spent
looked
$1
at
million
it.
on
But
that,
I'm not going
correct?
to debate you,
I spent
Mr.
$1
Mayor.
million
You
on
can do
that
that anytime
lawsuit.
you wish.
Okay. Counselor, get your facts straight. Get your facts straight. Use that computer to get your facts straight.
Right.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Mayor, you were done? Yeah, okay. Tony Zambuto, Councilor?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Listen, I'm not in favor of a moratorium. But on a side note, if the website is incorrect and we're showing a creative district that includes Wonderland dog track, I'd like to see that fixed tomorrow. Well, it appears that way when I look at it here. Okay, you're assuring me that, but I would ask you to have someone double check that, because it looks like it is on this photo here. So I don't know, unless we're looking at something different. It's a PDF, and it looks like it is included. But I take your word for it that it's not.
Yeah.
And that wouldn't sway my vote either way. So, but the bottom line is, we don't want to put out incorrect information verbally or visually if we're doing it.
Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
At this time, I'd like to call Paul Capizzi, the city solicitor. Paul, and then I'll get to Bob right after.
I'm here to address, if it's necessary, the merits of legally going forward with the moratorium. If folks are not interested in hearing that, I'm happy not to speak. Because it sounds like this whole issue of whether we do a moratorium or not is not even anywhere near resolved, or it seems unlikely that it will occur at all. But I'm happy to answer questions about the legalities of it if people have questions. Councilors have
The
questions.
council, how does the council feel?
Or if you want, I can just talk, but I think...
Yeah, just talk, that's all.
All right, the short answer is, yes, you can adopt a moratorium. That's the short answer.
Right.
The extension to that answer is that it has to be as a zoning amendment. So what the courts call it is an interim zoning. You have the power under the Zoning Act to do it. This proposal, as I understand it, and I'm not speaking to the merits of it at all, I don't know much about it, would affect certain districts, RC 1, 2, 3, neighborhood business, general business, central business, highway business by special permit, limited industrial, and possibly PUD, placing the moratorium. However, since it's a zoning amendment, you have to follow all the procedures of the Zoning Act to pass it as you would any other zoning ordinance. But also, the more important thing here is that there has to be some substantial relation between the moratorium and what the city is looking forward to do with its zoning. And as long as it doesn't violate the Zoning Act, as long as it's not unconstitutional, you can do it. But you do need a relationship between the proposed amendment and the moratorium and the city's comprehensive overall zoning plan. To just do it, I think, for no real reason, could be challenged and could be problematic. That's all I really have to say. If anyone has any questions about the process.
Council,
Through you to City Solicitor Capizzi, basically, if we were looking to study the zoning in the city of Revere, to set forward a plan within certain areas that would amend certain parts of the zoning. So, for example, if you wanted to put a foreign trades district in a PPD1 area or in a TED district, and you were studying the feasibility of doing that in order to put a foreign trade district there, could that be part of the process?
You know, it's not a yes or no question. I mean, I would not put the cart before the horse. I would not ask for a moratorium and then say someday we're going to sit down and figure out a long-range zoning plan. I would at first get together, creating whatever the zoning plan might be, and then from that plan, if you decide a moratorium is necessary to further study, to further work out the kinks, then I would maybe approach the moratorium approach. But I wouldn't do it the other way around, saying let's just have a moratorium because we want to change our zoning someday, we want to figure out what we're doing.
So from what I'm gathering from you, legally and technically, it's probably better just to do a study first, and then if we find something in that study to do a moratorium, or not at all.
I don't know if that's a legal opinion per se, but it's certainly a common sense approach. If you do a moratorium and someone wants to challenge it, we have to be able to go into court and say, here's why we're doing the moratorium. If I go in there and just say, well, because someone doesn't like that apartments are going up, that's not going to be good enough.
We've done a moratorium in the past regarding
No one has
small
challenged
lots.
it in court, though. I'm just
Right.
thinking, as a employer, if it's challenged in court, and you have to follow all the 48 procedures, if you don't, it is not considered a zoning amendment and therefore not valid.
Then, based upon what you're saying, the best alternative here is to study our zoning and study what we want to do for our zoning.
Again, I think that's a logical, common sense approach. Find out what it is you want to do zoning-wise for the city. That's not what I'm here to discuss. I don't have
See,
an
I'm not
opinion about
adverse to that. I'm not adverse to doing that either, and I appreciate your input.
Any other questions?
Councilor John.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Point of information, just for the record, I want to make it very clear that several years ago, working with the former mayor, Dan Rizzo, who was then chairman of zoning, I worked for and we finally got the designation SP, which is special permit, removed from the Point of Pines and the Grove section of Oak Island, you can no longer get a special permit to build a two-family or anything above that in that area. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have Bob O'Brien, who's from our Community Development Office. Robert, welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am indeed Bob O'Brien, Director of Economic Development for the City of Revere. And I must say, I agree with virtually everything that has been said by the councilors, including much of what was said by Mr. Rotondo, especially most recently with regard to zoning and studies and so on. I do, however, appear in opposition to the motion for a moratorium, with due respect to the maker of the motion, Mr. Rotondo. And I'll give you 5 very quick reasons why I could be more expansive. But the first is, it will send a negative message to the development community. Development interest has been a long time coming in Revere. It is now converging on Revere, north from Boston through East Boston, east from Cambridge through Somerville and Chelsea and Medford. It has now arrived at our door. We all know the development advantages that Revere has to offer, but one of them is some very attractive development sites, particularly along the waterfront, that are already zoned for residential development. That has attracted development interest in residential development in Revere. If we tell them now that they are knocking on our door to respond to our invitation, that they are not welcome, they will go away and they will not soon come back. And they will look for other opportunities, and they don't have to look too far. It's a very competitive environment. And I would be very reluctant to the message that is heard, even if it's a message different that we wish to send, because it travels far, wide, and very fast. The second point I would make is the effect of a moratorium, regardless of its length, is far greater and far longer than the length of the moratorium. If we're talking 6 months, I would say the effect of the referendum would be measured not in months, but in years. Development has a very long lead time. There are people in the community now doing their due diligence about whether or not there are development possibilities they wish to pursue. The mere hint of a moratorium, which already is out there and has resulted in a lot of people asking me about it, the mere hint of it will, at a minimum, diminish their enthusiasm. But for many of them, it's likely to be a deal breaker. For others who have already had developments approved of a residential nature, any interruption in the process of design and construction is a very significant and undue penalty, which will be recognized by other potential developers. All of these are red flags that will result in not a 6-month delay in development projects, but development parcels that have long been vacant for years will continue to be vacant for years. A 6-month interruption is not measured in months, it's measured in years, and people pay attention to that. The third thing I would say is, this is a residential moratorium, but effectively it is also a commercial moratorium, because these are not mutually exclusive opportunities. Residential development and commercial development go hand in hand. One needs the other. One is a precursor to the other. Ideally and optimally, they live together. Now, I will concede that in the residential development thus far, we haven't seen the kind of retail and restaurant development that everybody has been looking for. To some extent, it's a function of the locations, which are relatively isolated from other retail districts, but that is changing. The next phase of the Waterfront Square development will have a new hotel, a full-service hotel, with 10,000 plus square feet of retail and a lot of activity that will bring people to that destination. The Shaw's site itself will have a hotel with a restaurant that will be available to the public. And even the hint of development along Revere Beach Parkway has already stimulated interest from at least 6 restaurateurs who want to be part of the development on Revere Beach Boulevard. If we put a moratorium on residential development, we effectively put a moratorium on that kind of commercial development. And that's significant because that presumably is what we want. The other thing I would say is the development is not so overwhelming that it can't be controlled and monitored and managed through the normal course of events. It's not like we need a moratorium to catch up. The queue is not that long. We can do everything as has been suggested, as we have done it before, quite effectively, and I don't think we need to interrupt the whole process to allow that to happen. Finally, I would say one thing that I think has been underrated, and that is the residential development that we have had thus far has been good for Revere. We have had in the Waterfront Square development and along Revere Beach Parkway, there have already been constructed, occupied, or in development 658 units. Another 690 are planned in the next phase of Waterfront Square and on the Shaw's site. That's 1,350 almost new units. They will generate $3.7 million of property taxes every year. They will contribute $2.3 million to water and assessment fees that benefit the entire community, including but not limited to the project. And in the case of Shaw's, there's $600,000 plus of community development funds. Of those funds, particularly the property taxes, a good portion of that goes to the public school system, over 40%. It's about 1.6 million. There are no students in the Covington building. There are not likely to be any students in the Ocean 650 building, likely not even in Shaw's, because they are not sized, they are not designed, and they are not marketed to attract families with school children. So these projects contribute to the benefit and improvement of the educational system without putting an undue burden on it. The same is true with regard to public safety. These projects together contribute about $750,000 a year of property taxes for public safety issues. That's the kind of money that can be put to reopening the Alden Mills Fire Station, which Councillor Powers has long espoused, and other projects. They do not put undue demands on the public safety system, but they generate additional funds for its benefit. For all of those reasons, I think it may well be well-intentioned, but it is ill-advised to pass a moratorium. Certainly not without study, but I would say probably under any circumstances at this stage in our development process.
Mr. Chairman.
As the former mayor, we were through cyclical times. We had part of the beach sold, and they gave us a down payment, and what happened is they walked away. The city got the down payment, but they didn't get the investment in the city. And you have to get these cycles when they're here. You can't wait till they pass you by, and then all of a sudden you say, I want to build here. It's impossible, okay? So
And
I'd like to
developers are
comment.
easily spooked.
Right, no question.
And they go away and they don't come back because they're welcomed elsewhere.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, through you to the speaker.
Yes, Councillor Rotondo.
Thank you. I do have a couple of questions as I'm a little puzzled. So companies like Draper Labs, GE, Fidelity, they don't require residential components for development, and that's what I would want to attract here. And any mixed development of retail and residential always is the lower end of commercial development. Any urban planner will tell you that. My uncle Fred Salvucci will point that out to you. That said, whether it be the lower spectrum of commercial development, the mixed use as you point out, or the upper side of commercial development, which is actually like a laboratory, Novartis or something of that nature, why wouldn't we want to attract that here instead of actually having apartments, number one? Number two, what are the 5 companies that are looking to do business in the city of Revere? And the other thing is, I disagree with your idea that they're going to move by. The market's hot, as you so put. There is no other acreage inside of the north region that befits it. Revere has the largest amount of acreage. Lynn doesn't. Chelsea doesn't. Everett doesn't. Malden doesn't. Medford doesn't. So where are they going to go? They have to go here. So the idea that they're going to walk on by is doubtful, because the idea is that there's another place for them to go. Where are they going to go?
Well, I would say just a couple of things, Councillor. One, residential and commercial development, including office and institutional development, actually do go together. If you look at the development of the Seaport District, it is the ability to live, work, play, stay in the same community that is attracting organizations like General Electric, for example, to the Seaport District. So the mix of uses in a community, including residential uses, and the ability to live in attractive and affordable residences is very important to people who want to attract urban workers to their to the employee.
GE wasn't attracted there, and I spoke to Mayor Walsh about this. They weren't attracted there because of the residential.
Oh,
They
yes,
were
they
attracted there because of the incentives that the city provided them.
Well, I will
Chris Cohane, who was my campaign manager, and his, I mean, this is exactly what we spoke about.
I will
We have to
concede-
provide incentives in order to attract those types of businesses here.
And
They
that may
weren't there
well be the
because of
case.
the residential.
No, that may be the case here, but it is not all or nothing, Councillor. Residential is an important component of the attraction of the Seaport District as an urban destination for General Electric, and they have said that. Clearly, they would not have done that on that alone for urban design and development reasons without the incentives, but it's all part of a larger strategy. And I must say,
I would
those
agree.
strategy opportunities open up to us on sites like Wonderland and Suffolk Downs. I could not agree with you more. And the zoning for those all has to emerge from the planning process itself. But the effect of the moratorium now will indirectly be on Wonderland to the extent that it discourages developers who might otherwise be interested in a mix which includes residential and are now being told that it won't. But the development opportunities that are available now to us have to do with what's happening along the beach, which are already zoned as residential opportunities. These reflect the present and past priorities of the City Council and the City of Revere. So I think inadvertently, were a residential moratorium to pass now, you would stop what you're wanting to happen and have an indirect but eventual impact on what you want to happen on Wonderland.
And at this point, so which restaurants are coming? Because I'm kind of a foodie, if you haven't noticed.
There are 6 restaurants that have expressed an interest in being on Revere Beach Boulevard in a new residential development, if indeed it takes place there. Some of them are national, but most of them are local and regional. People who have restaurants in the area, Malden, Medford, other places that want to be represented in Revere. Believe me, the residential commitment and investment that these people are willing to make, plus the commitment from the retail and residential sector, is a tribute to the kind of opportunities that Revere now offers, and we should not discourage them.
So would you be adverse to a study?
I'm not adverse to a study so long as it doesn't stop everything in place, because a lot of things have to happen while that study goes along. And the best focal point for the study, in my view, would be a site like Wonderland, where a whole mix of uses, including the ones that you suggest, can actually occur. Draper Labs is not going to go on Revere Beach Boulevard, and we don't want them to. But they do have an opportunity in Revere and others like them. That's what we should focus on.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Good job. At this point in time, I'd like to have a vote on this issue. Could you call the roll call, please?
Roll call of the committee members on the motion by Councillor Rotondo that the city establish a 6-month construction moratorium on residential properties greater than 4 units. Councillor Keefe?
No.
No. Councillor McKenna?
No.
No. Councillor Powers? Is absent.
Yep.
Councillor Rotondo? Yes. Yes. Councillor Zambuto?
No.
No. And Chairman HAAS?
No.
No.
So this will be reported out this evening negatively, okay? Since we have 10 more minutes here, I'd like to really go back. Judge Rotondo had a couple of other issues here. You want to take them up? Okay, take up 157.
Council Order Number 16-157, motion of Councillor Rotondo that the city investigate the feasibility of obtaining foreign trade zone status for general purpose and subzones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Basically, a foreign trade zone like they have up in Holyoke, they allow you to do several things. To be quite honest with you, it's a real interesting process. And it does take some legwork, but what it does is it attracts the various international businesses to our community. So, in short, it's a designated site licensed as a foreign trade zone, which allows various international firms into U.S. markets and having them stage here in Revere. There's a general purpose zone, which are usually located near the ports or industrial parks, as well as subzones, which are special purpose zones, usually for manufacturing and things of that nature. And they're basically used to allow companies to offset the customs process, and it provides them an advantage and avails them to overseas producers. And that's pretty much what it is.
All right. Any further discussion? All those in favor? Call a roll call.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman.
Yes.
Can we keep this in committee so we can get more information about this? I don't want to just vote up or down on this
Okay.
now.
Keep it in committee.
Thank you.
Okay.
Council Order 16-272, motion of Councillor Rotondo that the city adopt a pedestrian transit-oriented development overlay district from Route 1A North to Route 60 East.
George?
I think at this point, it's best to table it, considering the ongoing developments that Bob has spoken about. Thank you.
In committee? All those in favor? All those opposed? So voted. So that concludes the November 14th meeting of the zoning subcommittee. Thank you all for attending.